Here's a poem called Power. While her classmates cut in panels, bent pipe, worked from blueprints, the Black girl ran for coffee, rustled stock, drilled ceiling anchors by the mile, and swept the shanty out, often worked alone. So, when she was paired up with a crackerjack mechanic, a brother, and the foreman asked how they'd like to disconnect a transformer, high voltage, placing the cutter in her palms, she leaped like a racehorse out of the starting gate. The white boss walked them over to where the end of the cable laid in a flaccid loop, lifted it to show the circle of fresh cut copper, round and wide-eyed as a shiny dollar coin, proof power was dead. She was fired up, but Omar, bless the man, had to teach. They walked the length of the site and back, retrieved his meter as he explained good practice. Test equipment, take no one's word. The meter buzzed, 480. The two looked down, saw wet mud beneath their boots, looked up, white faces like a postcard from a lynching, gathered on the ledge above to watch. When I think about this story, my story, I know of two incidents of where they tried to remove me from the planet, take me off the planet, and this is one. And Susan, you have captured it so well. That day for me was horrific. And Omar is still in my life. He is my son's godfather. He's my lifesaver. And I have taken his teachings further. I totally respect the brotherhood and sisterhood and the allies that I've come in contact.
Crazy by Susan Eisenberg. A plumber, an electrician, and a carpenter, all female, eat lunch in the electrician's car. Over waltzes a guy from their job who unzips his jeans and on her front fender takes a whiz. Saunters back to his pickup. The electrician follows the guy, demands an apology. He laughs. She pulls out her pocket knife, warns. You got out of your truck to piss on my car. You'll get out of your truck to apologize. He does. Now a crowd's gathered and the super's involved. The super's livid because she used swears and a knife. Claims he can't help a lady who acts unladylike. In truncated form, the story, serpents, job site to job site. Crazy gal waved a big knife and threatened our good pal. You know him. This poem, Crazy, speaks to me in so many ways. I think that every HR person, foreman, union rep should read this and understand it. I just feel like the electrician didn't have any option to win. If she stood up for herself, she's not a lady. If she tells on him, she's a rat. You're put in an impossible situation. And I think that reading this, understanding it, you can get to the point where you see us or her for what we are, someone to be admired for having to go through this kind of walk of fire.
Sunshine by Susan Eisenberg. She made the mistake of telling her white journeyman to stop calling her Sunshine. She hated being called Sunshine. She had a name, wanted to be called by her own name. And from then on, day's start to day's end, roll out the chords to roll up the chords, it was sunshine, 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 sunshine. Each sunshine, like a screwdriver poked in her back rib, a reminder of her position lower than whale shit on that construction site, but more, a reminder of slaveholding's long shadow that laws have not blocked. I love this poem. I love this poem because it reminds me of my mother. And why does it remind me of my mother? Because when we graduated from high school, my mother told each of us not to smile on our graduation picture. Why? Well, my theory is that she didn't want to uphold any stereotypes of black folks. She didn't want some big old watermelon eating smile, step and fetch it, little black Sambo and Jemima, teeth showing thing. So we didn't. And that's what Sunshine was to this sister on her job, to not be called by her name as an equal, but to have this diminutive Sunshine put on her was a cause to object and reject being minimized, as the society is wont to do. And they say that sticks and stones may break your bones, but names will never hurt you, is a lie. Those of us who have been called the N-word by a car full of white faces screaming as they went past you know how painful the roots of racism are.
I'm going to read the title poem from Stanley's Girl. There's offensive language that turns the end of the poem. Stanley's Girl. Seasoned foreman and 3-month apprentice, Midwest transplants both. We swapped stories and bonded our first day team together. With his hacksaw, Stanley made an X mark still there on all my just bought tools. To school me in safety, Stanley showed his 9 fingers. He'd stuck his hand in the mower as a boy, told how on the farm his mom could handle every job. How he'd gone from farming to mining and quit mining, didn't even pick up his check the day going down the shaft. A man in the cart just ahead of his leaned out and lost his head. Then got his first electrical job, replacing a man whose burned shoes were still in the vault. He taught that a smart foreman knows the bid, paces work so the owner makes money, but no one kills himself. Finish early, leave early. Taught me to bolt chains to high ceilings, not when it's time to hang fixtures, but months ahead when it's easy. To catch blueprint mistakes and quietly run pipes for the extras you can charge more for when the finish is up. When sheetrockers buried electrical boxes, Stanley bellowed, "That's why electricians carry hammers. We'll bash holes till we find 'em." And walls down. When the owner wanted to get a guy from the hall for some really crap job, Stanley'd say, "I'm a guy from the hall." And we'd be up in a cramped ceiling or down in a filthy engine room. When he caught a bad flu, Stanley took days off, left me in charge. The owner found out when he stopped by the job and caught the girl apprentice conferring with the super over blueprints. Stanley was everything I admired in the trade, until the day he saw a black man on the site. "What's that jungle bunny doing here?" All my throat could say was, "What?" Which, like a scratch in an old LP record, only skipped him back to repeat in that Minnesota twang I'd come to rely on as my passport to this trade. "What's that jungle bunny doing here?" Stanley's riled now. I keep silent, buckle myself in for this ride, for better and worse. I started my apprenticeship in a different shop where I had a foreman who bragged about sending apprentices of color to the hospital. I remember being so afraid of him that driving to work, I'd have rivers of tears running down my cheeks. Apprentices can't quit, so I was relieved when a few months later I was laid off. Landing in a new shop with Stanley as my foreman saved my career and made me excited about the path I'd chosen. Stanley was a brilliant mechanic and very smart and street smart about the work, and a strong trade unionist. He was highly respected and admired by other men on the job and in the shop. And the fact that he took me under his wing and showed me blueprints and took me seriously opened a path for me. I was in the first group of women to graduate apprenticeship in my local, so I was usually the first woman a man encountered on the job site. I guess I kind of idolized Stanley. And then suddenly he was a human being. In that moment that's captured toward the end of the poem, it's a moment I felt very ashamed of when I had no response, and confused. I realized how much growing I would have to do, because the only vocabulary I had then for situations like that was to have very self-righteous name calling. And I really didn't know how to interrupt someone I respected so much. Stanley taught me not only a tremendous respect for the trade that I had entered, but that I was a first-year apprentice in more ways than I had known. I didn't want to be so unprepared again. I had a lot to learn.
Hi, I'm Vicki O'Leary, Director of Diversity for the Ironworkers International, and I'm an ironworker out of Local 1 in Chicago. And I want to read you a poem by Susan Eisenberg. It's called Towards Ambidexterity. Dear left arm, they are true, your accusations. I did abandon you in infancy, ignore you, stifle you, neglect your training. But in my defense, it was the custom. You were the right arm's helpmate, girl child, wife. Yes, it was the right hand, always the favored one that answered mail, cut the vegetables, paid the bills, handled tools. While you, coordination unrefined, strength unencouraged, grew to diminished adulthood. Your handwriting, even, is childlike. Now those muscles long ignored rise up, beg to throw a softball, write a poem, swing a hammer, paint a banner, and you point toward me and accuse. But how was I to know your desires? You never spoke up, never pushed your way in. Or perhaps it was, I did not hear until now, when the tasks are too large to disregard allies. Only as a balanced whole can the body redress history. You have taught me all hands are needed. When I first heard this poem, I thought, well, how does that, how is that prevalent in my career? And then I started thinking about when I was an apprentice and I learned to weld in the welding booth in the apprenticeship. And it was easy. It came naturally. And I realized that the first time that I was on a job that I had to use this skill, that, gosh darn it, I had to do it with my left hand. And it was challenging.